All right, guys. Let me just give you a couple things that we do that hopefully works here. It's probably different than a lot of you do for the way you create the account. As far as the door approach, everyone has their own way of doing that. That's not terribly difficult. We're more into the concept, right? So if it's at the first visit, and once we kind of get into the rhythm of it, after the first few minutes at the door, once we get in the house, or especially once we're doing the CAD, there's a few principles that we emphasize here more than maybe we do in other markets. And this doesn't matter where you sell it, whether it's in an area where there's not as much savings, or an area where you sell more on green energy. Regardless, what we emphasize is the fact that we're a power company. There's a few reasons we do that. The first one is that it's their last bill they'll ever pay, right? So let's say you foreclose on your house. You may not pay your mortgage for 6 months, but you sure as heck have your power on when the time you leave, right? So one way that we'll break it down to try to simplify it in their mind and to eliminate any doubt is we'll break it down and say that there's 3 ways that you get power, right? So just, there's 3 ways to get power, okay? The first way is with their current utility, right? So here it's PG&E. So PG&E is one way that you do it. That's the only way they've been able to do it. So we'll go over, and I think it's important to emphasize that the way they currently get their power from a utility, that sometimes they don't realize that they've been in a monopoly. And so a lot of times I'll discuss getting it, the way you get your power. In America we have a free market. We can choose where we get our products or services. You can't choose your power company. It's obvious, but sometimes you need to flush that out. And it usually drives people nuts that they're forced to get power from one source and they have to have it. So there's nothing that protects them, right? They're forced into getting it, which that argument, so to speak, will work across the board, regardless of the market you're in. And so, for one, they're forced to get their power this one way. There's nothing they can do about it. So that's easy. You'll emphasize the monopoly, right? I can write all these down, but the monopoly, they're obviously they're subject to any rate hikes that the utility has. So even if the savings wasn't very good, it doesn't matter, because in 5 years the savings could be great because all utilities are going up, and that their costs are, whether it's greed or whether it's the fact that the power company has all the control, or maybe their costs are extremely high, which I think they are. Regardless, they have no choice in where they get their power. So that's their first choice in how they get electricity. The second choice, which in this market we have to emphasize, we discuss other solar options up front. It's like with any objection, it's best to deal with it in advance. So we'll go over the fact that we like to hit on leases, purchases, other ways of getting solar, because if you don't go on that, especially here, they're going to do their research, they're going to talk to their friends, they're going to have someone that either leased it or bought it or anything. So we try to couple those all into one, right? So the second way would be that they get the second way they get their power would be from solar, but it's from a purchase, a loan, or a lease, right? And I make those the same. And then what's nice is that we don't have to attack another company. All the companies do one of these 3 things, right? So I don't have to go after SolarCity directly or Sunrun. I just say, hey, they're all the same, right? So you outline this and you say you got Sunrun, I can go through them, SolarCity, SC, whatever, you can name whatever your competition is in the market. That every way you get power is through one of these companies. Or the way you get solar is through one of these companies. And the reason why people haven't done it is because there's a lot of strings attached. So I'll hammer the lease, right? And I use a lease throughout my pitch in virtually every objection. I'll triangulate it where, they'll ask about the move, and I'll say, well, the nice thing is it just switches to the new homeowner. If you had a lease, they have to qualify for it, right? Like buying a home. You buy the house, you qualify for the mortgage, you have enough debt to income to get the house you want. Most people buy as much home as they can for whatever they can get loaned. And they sell their home. The new family's coming in, they've got as much as they can get to buy that house. And they're, yay, high fives, everyone's happy, we just bought a house, you're happy, you sold your house. And before you know it, they're moving in and they're trying to get this solar in their name. And they can't because the bank won't let them, because they're dealing with the bank, right? So they're dealing with a third-party bank that's financing it. And I compare it, it's really relevant to people, and a good comparison to make is buying a car. So you buy a car, what are the options you have? You either pay cash for the car, and the prices are pretty similar, right? So say the car's 30 grand. You're either going to pay 30 grand for the car, you're either going to get a loan, or you're going to get a lease. Either way, there's a sticker price. Either way, you end up paying that sticker price, whether you pay it up front or you pay it in the back end. And if you don't pay your bill, then you go to collections, right? Or in this case, you get a lien on your house, right? So I'll hit on the fact that, with these guys, you got a lien, right? The big word is debt, right? So there's a lot of debt with this, and there's just a lot of negative feelings that come with it. And so while it might be nice to have solar and you wanted solar, if you're not gonna want to go into debt just because, right? You don't. Why would you go into debt? So you're kind of solving one problem. Hopefully you're solving this PG&E problem up here, but you're creating a new one, right? Because now you have another car payment. And if you try to move, too bad. If you buy the system outright, great. So you have the system for 10 years. What's it going to do in 10 years? You might move in 8, right? So you just lost money. You're not going to get it back in the purchase of the home. So it's, and I'll go into that here in just a second. So it's kind of an emotional roller coaster I put them on. The first one is, the way you get power now sucks. You don't have a choice. That's pretty easy. Most people agree with you on that. You can ask good questions to get it out of them. What's happy is, you can get solar, but up to this point, getting solar wasn't very smart because you had to get a loan or a lease, and that, or you had to buy it, and that's not your best option. So you were smart to wait, customer. You were smart to wait to see what else came out. And what Vivint did is Vivint looked at it and said, why doesn't everyone have solar? Well, they don't not because it doesn't work. They don't because of all the debt, of the liens, of all the strings attached, and a bank, and financing, and interest rates, and all that kind of garbage, that people don't want to do that. So they've just kind of held off, and they've been stuck with with PG&E or the power company, right? So so then, as they go kind of on this emotional roller coaster, so to speak, then we come in and say, look, Vivint made a system where you just have to buy the power. You're not on the hook to buy the system. You're not obviously stuck with a power company that can raise your rates at any time. We're going to lock in your rate, so you know what your rate's going to be. You can know that in advance. Now you finally, as a consumer, have the ability to make a decision on who you get your power from, but you don't have all the strings attached with a lease or a loan or a purchase, right? So, and then I'll basically say the third option is a PPA. Other companies will say they do PPAs, they never push it. In fact, almost all the PPAs are basically leases disguised as a PPA. And so so emphasizing the PPA, you basically say we're going to eliminate the debt. We're going to make it so that you don't have to purchase all this. And basically we just, in simple terms, it's a no risk option. There's really no risk. You can move whenever you want, no problem. If you sell your home, it's basically a contingent of sale, right? So if someone has a pool, they don't want to buy the home in a pool, they won't buy your home. But that being said, for the amount of people that are not going to buy your home because you have solar, there'll probably be 10 people that are attracted to it, especially when there's no strings attached. And I really say that with confidence because there really isn't. Whoever lives there has got to have power, whether it's them or someone else. The beauty, and then so once I make that clear, that's what they're doing is buying the power from us, that we're basically another power company. The other, you need to parlay that, and this is probably one of the biggest key points. I visited one of my offices recently, and I asked the group, how many here explain how we make money, right? Because typically what happens when you leave the home, the homeowner, they don't, the reason why a lot of times they cancel is there's too much pressure put on up front. They don't always know what's going on. They want to, they need to investigate their options, and really, there's a little bit of doubt or there's some skepticism in there because they think it sounds too good to be true. The best objection in the world to get is that. But if you don't address it and you don't proactively address it, then you totally miss the boat. Because now you're going to leave the home with a little bit of doubt, and whatever you didn't answer, they're going to find out and they're going to answer. The first time I went on a sale when I got to Hawaii a couple years ago, I went with Dan Reed, and the one thing, I had done a preseason alarm trip the week before, and all of a sudden I'm in a house doing solar with Dan, and it was kind of a no-no in alarms to ask if you have any questions. You just kind of go to the next step. And I remember Dan asking, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions? Does that make sense? I think he even asked, does the agreement make sense? And I looked at him like, what are you doing, dude? And I left and I said, why'd you ask so many questions? He said, look, they're not getting it tonight. So they're going to sleep on it. They're going to talk to their friends and their family, and they're going to go online. And if I haven't addressed all the questions, then I'm going to leave the home, and they're going to have all this doubt as to what they just did. Oh no, we just signed this contract, and what is this whole thing all about? And they're going to go online, and what's people's comfort zone is to do nothing, right? So he's going to leave the home. The homeowners are going to be concerned, and before you know it, they're like, you know what? I don't know if we should do this. Let's pull back, and then they cancel, right? So you got to eliminate that doubt. And there's a few ways to eliminate it, but the key is to basically, sometimes I get my giant calculator out, and I'll basically ask, how much money or how much do you pay on average for your bill? Your power bill, I don't know, $200. Okay, so I'll do 200 times whatever, times 12 times 20 months or 20 years, right? It's a big number. It's usually like 50 grand, okay? I can do it, but you get the concept. And then I'll say, okay, well, let's say we install solar at your house. We'll probably save you 30 to 40%. So let's say your bill is 120, right? I'll do the same thing, 120. And this is now, when I do their rate, I tell them, I say, this is if your rate never goes up in 20 years, which is highly unlikely. And it's highly unlikely their rate won't go up. And so what we'll do is we get, I'll do the same math, 120 times 12 times 20 years. And then, whoa, there's a big number. They saved a lot of money. Yay, congratulations. You paid nothing, and this is what you saved. And that's in a best case scenario. If this power company never goes up, it's usually a lot more than that you save. And I'll typically subtract out, I don't know our cost, but I'm guessing, I don't know, what, cost us 10 grand, 15 grand, or whatever to put it up there. So I'll subtract that out of it, and then there'll be a final number. I'll say, this is our profit. We're going to make whatever, 8 grand on the deal. Awesome. You paid nothing. You saved money, we made money. We both, when it works, we make money. When the sun comes up, we make money. When the sun, and when the sun comes up, you save money. So we're on the same page. Our interests are completely aligned. And I think if you can create an alignment in the initial sale, then you can eliminate a lot of that doubt. Because all you want to do when you create the account is you want to get a site survey that's done. You have to get usage. That's a no-brainer because you need to get a CAD, right? But what you're really wanting is you want a second at bat. That's what I refer to it as. You want another chance. Even if they have a ton of objections up front, I'll address them. But sometimes I'll punt it, right? I'll tell, hey, when I get your design, that'll answer a lot of your questions. If they're, how much am I going to save and how much? Because I don't go into the numbers much, hardly ever actually. Or the 2.9, what's that going to be year to year? And I'll hit on it. I'll hit on it briefly and kind of move on, address it so where they feel fine, but then I go on to the next thing. And sometimes I'll go back to a CAD, I'm thinking, oh man, this guy was a beast, he's going to be a tough CAD close, and I'll go back, and the guy's, he doesn't even have any questions. You show up and he's like, hey, when do we start? All right, well, he almost catches you off guard. You're like, yeah, well, like in a few days, I just got to get your permit, and hopefully you've gotten all the signatures and payment up front. If you need to get a signature, you need to get payment, you get it at that point because they're already sold. And so it's important to make sure, it's important to get, pay PPA up front. You want to get payment if you can. You want to get everything if you can because it makes your job easier. But if you have to return to the home and you don't have payment, then once the value's there, once they're sold, it's really easy to get it because you've already created the value. And then it's like, oh, by the way, I just got to get a $1 check. And then, oh, okay, and then just write it out and give it to you and you're good to go. So we need to really focus on on making sure our site surveys are done and that they don't cancel from the time you create the account to the time the site survey is done. If that's happening on a regular basis, you need to change something in your approach, because that should really never happen. And always get usage. That's a no-brainer. You have to get usage. Because then once you get that CAD, the first thing you do is you go and do that CAD.